Good evening and welcome. On behalf of Universidad EAFIT, we want to welcome you to this webinar where we are going to be talking about traceability and visibility in the global food chain. I am Camilo Pérez, one of the professors in the International Business Department, and I'll have the pleasure of moderating this conversation with Mr. Gary Lowe, founder and CEO of DiMuto in Singapore, and Mr. Stefan Krautwald, general partner of Latin Lib here in Colombia. Over the recent years, Universidad EAFIT has decided to promote agriculture as one of the strategic areas looking to the future. The best evidence of these commitments are the creation of our new agronomic engineering program, the establishment of the agrotech research agenda last year, and the work that other schools such as the International Business School and the Asia Pacific Studies Center are doing to help agribusiness in their internationalization process, among, of course, many other initiatives across the different schools at the university. Colombian exports from the food sector have experienced a significant increase over the recent years. This is the result of several innovations that have driven this growth. Although around 80% of Colombian food exports are still traditional items such as coffee, bananas, flowers, sugarcane, and palm oil, the exporters of these products have introduced a number of innovations that are now bringing them to new markets in the Asia Pacific region, as well as the Middle East, and many of them are adding value to their products. We see, for example, many exporters now selling specialty coffees in the international markets, and we see now exports of exotic flowers such as orchids increasing as well. But there are other innovations that are related to offering new products to these international markets. Over the recent years, we see avocados, citrus fruits, golden berries, and passifloras also having their own share among Colombian exports and being able to position Colombia as an exporter in the international markets. Having access to these international markets, and in particular with agricultural products, requires the compliance of increasingly strict sanitary and phytosanitary regulations, as well as guaranteeing the highest levels of quality. This visibility is of vital importance nowadays, today, as with COVID-19, there are growing concerns about food safety and increasing awareness about sustainability across the industry. Customers are more concerned about the footprint of everything they buy, and there are more concerns about food waste. And that's the reason why technology has proven to be the greatest ally in order to achieve these higher sustainability, but also to guarantee better access for Colombian agricultural products to international markets. Tech innovations allow exporters to have the visibility and the traceability that governments and customers are requiring, and this is precisely the topic of our conversation today. Feel free to share your questions, use the chat. You can ask these questions in either English or Spanish, and we will happy to answer them, or we'll do our best to answer them during the Q&A session towards the end of the keynote. So once again, welcome Gary, Stefan, our speakers, and all the people who is connected with us at this time.
Thank you.
Stefan, welcome, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Camilo, for this introduction, and thank you to the university for this room that we have right now in order to elaborate a little bit on the AgTech visibility. Now, a small introduction from my side as well. My name is Stefan Krautwald. I'm leading the venture capital studio headquartered in Medellin called Latin Lib, and in Latin Lib we focus on several key areas that will drive economic evolution and societal evolution in Latin America and precisely in Colombia. being agriculture one of those. And knowing that we have so many agriculture, agronomy students in this video session today, I dearly congratulate everyone. I think you've chosen the right career and a bright future, especially given the fact that Latin America will be so important to basically feed the world with its abundant the climate and its landscape of productive and usable soil, basically. What we believe is that the productivity of the sector and therefore the exports in the agricultural sector can still be enhanced considerably. So in this slide, we've set out to spot the most interesting international businesses that have specific solution and that can leapfrog and accelerate local agriculture export efforts and AgTech efforts and such. And we found in the Southeast Asian market, precisely bundled up in the hub of Singapore, basically, a very good base to look at solutions that are very advanced and that can bring this leapfrogging effort to Latin America. And in this regard, DiMuto is a company that basically jumped into our eye straight away, a company very well backed up with solid funds and with very solid initial founders, and that has a strong solution to bring traceability into the global food chain. And we have seen over the past weeks and months that it's been very interesting connecting local producers and especially exporters to this solution. So I'm very happy to pass on the word now to Gary Lowe, who is the protagonist of tonight's happening. Basically, Gary is the founder of the company DiMuto. He'll speak for himself, and very happy to have him with us. It's very early in the morning, Singapore, for him. Thank you, Gary, for joining, and let's go.
Thank you, Stefan. And thank you, Camilo, and thank you to the university for this opportunity. My name is Gary, and I'm basically the founder of DiMuto. Maybe before I go on to the presentation of why DiMuto was formed, let me just give a little bit of introduction to myself, and I think it's good to have the young people who's coming into this industry, like what Stefan says. It's really quite exciting times. Most people wouldn't think agriculture to be something exciting in the past, but like what Stefan is really saying, especially in Latin America, in Colombia, the only place that can feed the world and produce more than what they can really consume would be Latin America. Because in most places, you will realize is that I think they are eating more than they can actually produce. So this is a big problem. And I think Professor Camilo has basically highlighted a lot of problems of the world. It's great that we're trying to export. It's great that we're trying to connect. But like he said earlier in his opening speech, was that it's a very big world at the same time, and it's very complex. So if I were to give you all some background, I didn't start in this space as a founder of a startup. My career started off really in the finance space. Like very many years ago, most people try to go into the finance space. I started in finance. I was a VC, I was an investment bank, I was a stockbroker, and eventually set up my own private equity firm. And I invested in one of the companies that was growing Fuji apple in China and selling to the world. And this is the start of my agriculture journey. You know, it was a very difficult company to turn it around because it was running a huge plantation, 1,900 hectares. We were packing the fruits at the same time. We were packing lines and huge storage facility of about 40,000 metric tons. and we were selling to about 15,000 point of sales throughout Southeast Asia. So it was one of those companies that was doing everything from the beginning to the farming all the way to selling. And unfortunately, it was so complex at that time that this company was about to go bankrupt before we came in and saved that company and turned it around. So that was what I did. And how did DiMuto come about? I just want to share a little bit of this. DiMuto came about because of the fact that we wanted to solve a problem. And I think sometimes when people talk about problems, especially big problems, people think that, well, maybe the problem is from farm to the consumer. So the solution needs to have one where you try to solve the problem from the beginning to the end. But when I looked at it, when I hear the people talking about the problems and the solution, sometimes I find it's a little bit misleading. And I wanted to share that you don't always solve a problem by looking at a problem from the beginning to the end. Sometimes you just have to look at the problem at the micro level. Because what is the problem in the global trade? Actually, the problem is it's a problem of transaction. It is a problem of selling from A to B. And there are many A to Bs, and they are all connected. So the way DiMuto approached the problem, not really talking about what is the technology to solve the problem, but maybe look at the problem by saying, look, we need to build trust from A to B. And there are many A to Bs that we need to do. So let's tackle each transaction and combine them. And this is how DiMuto was formed. We used the best technology to solve the problem and did not build a technology to solve the problem. So we looked at everything that was available, and we realized that there was no one answer to the solution that we need, to the problem that we have. So we built DiMuto from the ground up, really looking at what is available, and then after that we combine. So that's the background. So I just wanted to share a little bit of the background, and then I'll go into the presentation. If I may, please have the presentation. So what we want to do is demystify the global trade, all right? It seems very complicated, but let's tackle it now. Next. So what most people think about the global trade is that it's well connected, right? It's all dotted with straight from the farm to the consumer. And that's what most people think, because most people outside of their own country just goes down to the supermarket, or they just order online and the fruit appears. So it must be a straight line. But next, we all know the truth. The truth of the global trade is that it is not a straight line. So you will see that the problem of the next, I think Sarah can just click as you go. Yeah, thank you. It's fundamentally digitally fragmented and it's disconnected. Most of us don't really know what is going on, and it's really about a paper and a pen. And you can see that a lot of the time it is one connection to the next connection, and after that, no one knows what happens after that connection. So like I said, it actually is all these little small transactions that actually make the big transactions, all right? And this is how we've been tackling the problem. Now, if this problem doesn't get solved, what happens, all right? Next. You will see that one of the biggest problems would be food waste. Because if you don't have the data and you do not have visibility, this will be one of the big problems that we are facing right now. Next. You will see issues like financial access, because $1.5 trillion worth of a finance gap, because people in our trade, because we're doing imperishable, are not getting the banks. The banks are not supporting us because they don't understand how to support. Next, dispute. How do you prove that these are issues that we actually have, that basically what you send from Colombia and all the way to Singapore, this was exactly what you sent. And then we all don't know what was packed. And then when it arrives, the people who packed it don't know what was actually received. And this dispute has actually plagued us for a long, long time. This is what the global trade is all about. And this is one of the problems that we need to solve. And of course, the lack of market access is when you start growing more, how do you then basically get issues like going to new markets and basically open up more markets for your products? And of course, most of the problems that we are currently facing is the fact that when you do consumer engagement, there is none. The person who packs the avocados in Colombia, they don't know who bought it. And there is no way someone in Singapore can say to someone in Colombia, thank you very much for growing the fruit. It was excellent, right? And of course, fundamentally, this is where we want to solve. We want to basically solve this by digitizing. Digitalization is our key, right? That means, how do you now take the picture at the farm, put it on a QR code, be able to now trace and track, see what was being packed, follow the journey of the fruit all the way to the consumer, and then for the consumer to now be able to scan that product and be able to have a story behind it. Next. So one of the problems that we actually see, like we mentioned before, and this is an example, is that when you see an apple that was sent from Indonesia, it was received in Indonesia, sent from China. And someone says that that's a problem. In the past, no one would really know whose apple that is and what was the real problem. But today, you can see that the apple, what was packed and what was sent, it's basically a night and day comparison because now we have the visual. And we were actually able to say that you did not put in a proper cold storage. Next. We basically are also able to now empower suppliers to have the ability to get financing and expand their business because we know what they pack. And you can see that even in products in a cold room and putting the product, every one of them now is being traced. Next. So let me just give you a little bit of what we are digitizing, all right? We see the problem that this is where you address it. Where will you be able to get the most information of all the products that we're doing? And of course, it will be at the packing house as well as the repacking house. And this is where we start. And how do we do this? Next, you will be able to see some of the things that is very important. It all starts with the IoT device. That means we need to solve the problem of how do you have a solution to basically use the ability to take a picture using a mobile or an IoT device like the one we have built, and then using QR codes. Now, next. This is an example that, if you could see, how the labels are being actually tagged on the avocados in this situation. And then in the next video, you will see how every single box is now basically taken a picture of with the device that we have, and every one of the data is captured, and now it goes onto the cloud. Right? So first we need the IoT, then we need the cloud. So there are a couple of things that we need to build together. And of course, this is a very modern machine with a very modern packing line. But imagine if you go to Thailand or you go to China, where we are basically now packing one fruit at a time. They actually just use their mobile phone and literally use it one box at a time. So it's a lot slower, but the information is still there. Next. Now, after you take that picture, a lot of this is where you visualize the trade data. So now you can imagine that every single box has an identity. It's almost like your own driver's license, right? It means you know who's the one driving. And every single box is like a license plate, right? So it is almost like you can now identify each carton box and who is inside that vehicle, if you want to look at it that way. And this is basically what it is. And on top of it, we basically have a timeline of what happens along the way, every step of the way. And this is what we do on the blockchain. So the technology we have now adopted, first we talk about the IoT device, which is basically very important. Then we need to then put the data that we collected onto the cloud. And when you tackle the problem of the cloud, you need to basically have 3G, 4G, no G in a lot of the rural countries or rural areas. And then now talk about getting it onto the blockchain. All right, so this is kind of like the combination of technology that has been done. Next. So for the goods that has been received, that means you packed it, you got all the information, it's now sent all the way. We basically now allow the receiver to now say what happens to the fruit when it arrives. Straight away, they scan the fruit and tell us how it arrives and immediately feedback to us. Right? So you will know when it was open, you know when the cargo was open, and you now can actually immediately feedback. And if there's a problem, all they have to do is tell us which box, right? It's almost like someone saying you're speeding. Now you can tell which car is speeding and you can tell exactly what was their speed limit that they exceeded, right? And this is what is very, very important in our trade, that it no longer works in a way where you send a WhatsApp message or email and then you send a problem only a few days later where everybody don't really know what's going on. In this situation, everything is captured in one platform. Next. What's very important for us is also the consumer. Now you can actually get the consumer to actually scan the product, and on top of it, you can see where it's farmed, the farm information. You can get a feedback form, just like, whether it's at a 5-star rating, we like it, we don't like it, where did we buy it? And on top of it, we all know that scanning is only one thing. But how do you promote, right? How do you promote your products? How do you build loyalty points? How do you do promotions? Maybe even win a trip to go to Colombia, right? Go and see the farm, right? I think that would be very exciting for the consumer, and it's going to be a trip of a lifetime. And imagine what kind of social media response you're going to get from that. Okay, next. So where have we implemented this? We've been very fortunate. We started about more than a year ago, and we've been actually expanding very, very rapidly, because the way we've approached it is that I'm from the trade, and actually we created a solution for the trade. So we're very excited to basically have products from Latin America. It's starting Mexico, Colombia, Ecuador. We're going into Peru, we're going into Chile. So it's a lot of excitement going around, and as you can see that it really is about a global supply. And if you can imagine that we can see the visibility, then we can really tackle the problem. Without having the visibility, without having the traceability, it is always about a problem of you say, she say, he says, all right? So I'm very happy to say that this is really what we have done, and this is where we are. Next. Some of the partners, of course, you heard about Latin Lead, but we have actually worked with CIU, which is actually a Mexican post-harvest technology company. We are, of course, working with IBM or Google for all the clouds, as well as AI, which I'll talk a little bit, and of course, Oracle in terms of the ERP. GS1 is actually a global standards in terms of all the labels, and PMA, of course, is one of the biggest produce organization in terms of coming together. So this is a group of people that actually come together that has basically gone on this journey. Next. What's next? Right. So where are we going to go next? You will see that we'll continue to digitize a lot more, and this is where we're going to basically be working with the farmers. And you can imagine how a farmer in Colombia doing coffee, putting it on the beans, going to the aggregators. Now we're going out to the micro transactions now. And I'm very excited to see that this is going to change a lot of the way, because you can confirm what a farmer planted to what was collected, put all this onto a blockchain. And of course, once you can see what is being transacted, then we can talk about payments. And this is where micro payments together with micro transactions can now be done. And then the identity of the farmer with his mobile phone is again very clear to us. So this is really going to be quite exciting in the way we tackle the problem on the ground. Next. Systemizing it is basically going to allow us to blockchain and cloud computing to organize the information even more, which has already been done. So we've done the first two. Now the next part next is to capitalize on it, right? If you can see what we're doing, imagine that we are putting AI right now to make sure that every orange or every apple or every avocado or every grapes, we are now able to use AI to ensure what was packed, the ripeness of the fruit, the blemish on the fruit, and then what was received. Now, this technology is just the beginning, right? And we can see the excitement in the work that we're doing. There are a lot more AI because we can now talk about AI at the level of what was packed, giving a grading score. We can now talk about credit score and what was received and the payment of what was received. So the future for DiMuto at the end of the day is not just about traceability and visibility. Traceability and visibility give us a data to start off. It's not one where you sort of put your fingers in the air and says, how does the wind blow? We want to make sure that by making sure that we can digitize the data, turning something that's from analog into the digital world, we can start applying a lot of fancy technology, but the fancy technology doesn't work and it cannot be expensive. It has to be one that is practical. And this is what we have done. Next. This is it. This is about us. You can find out more about where we are, what we do. You know, I just want to make sure that for the young people out there, just if you're interested in this journey, please reach out to us, right? Think of other ways, you know, because the platform really started off with the fact that you need to make sure we get something analog into digital. And then where do we go from here? Really, it's really the sky is the limit, or maybe it's beyond, you know, the atmosphere and go to the moon, all right? There are a lot of moonshot technology from here. So thank you very much.
Gary, thank you very much. And thank you, Stefan. So we are very, very keen to interact with the people. We have some questions already. But yes, absolutely connected to what you were talking about at Universidad EAFIT. We also believe in the power of technology, in the transformation of agriculture, and also in the way that technology can have a very positive impact on international trade. So thank you very much for your keynote, Gary. So we have one first question, which is linked to what you just mentioned. And this question is, how is technology helping small agricultural exporters to comply with sanitary and phytosanitary requirements to be able to access international markets?
That's a very, very good question. I think the problem from here is a lot of the small farmers and people who do, the information isn't available. And most of the time when they say check the internet, whatever is posted on the internet, it's really quite generic, right? It doesn't really tackle the problem, because if you're a coffee bean grower, or you know, your coffee grower and your avocado grower, a pineapple grower, or you know, any of the passion fruit grower, you know, it's really different, and the requirements are a bit different. So where we think this is very important is that how do we make sure that the smaller farmers are aware about this, and this is where we can share that information, right? And this is one where I think governments like Colombia has been very active in even in our part of the world. And we want to make sure that when she puts it on the blockchain and allowing that certain information to be shared, then it's not about posting everybody so that it's transparent to everybody to see what has happened, but it allows the smaller boys to actually understand that these are the requirements and these are the standards. And on top of it, we also will be able to allow smaller farmers or smaller groups to come in, because they can express an interest. And once they can express an interest, we can also now reach out to them so that we know they are interested, right? So I think this is very, very key to really make sure that to make this a more level playing field, it's not about just the big boys against the small boys. I think we need to make sure that such phyto certification, sanitary certification, health certificate, these are very important things that even the smaller boys can actually join the export market if they understand what's required.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Gary. We have another question that is related to technology. And that question is, how are recent innovations with blockchain making technology more accessible to small agricultural producers? And what are the expected impacts or outcomes of this?
Stefan, maybe you can. Stefan, you're on mute.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, so maybe I can chime in here. So first of all, the blockchain technology is a relatively new one, which is always interesting when we have disruption on the technology front, that kind of the incumbent and large companies on the same playing field kind of leveled out to small companies. And this gives a lot of opportunities to smaller outfits and to startups coming up with solutions utilizing the blockchain technology. In the case of DiMuto, for instance, Gary will agree here. It's not that DiMuto has invented the blockchain. They are using the technology and adapting it so that it fits their specific needs. And then this is basically what, in parentheses, to a certain degree, every startup can try and do. Yeah, obviously we know it's not just the technology that's the decisive factor. It's rather an ecosystem as such. But we're seeing all over the continent startups coming up using blockchain technology in one form or another in the ag space, in different industries. So every time we have this kind of disruption, there's a lot of opportunities to try out new things, and on a rather cost-efficient level. And in the end, and I think DiMuto is just riding exactly on this wave. The blockchain technology, one of its core strengths is precisely the traceability and the visibility of everything, every bits of information that have been put onto it. So this is obviously key. For instance, the immutability of what has been put in the blockchain, the fact that information cannot be deleted afterwards, can be very interesting for different historic records in the agriculture space. We're seeing this, for instance, in terms of the soil sale purchases of land. Increasingly, we have companies that are using certificates in that sense to move over and to speed up the process of selling land, for instance. This is one of the applications in the rural area. So I believe it has great potential for those that try to revolutionize the industry on one way or another, and don't need to build up a costly internal infrastructure, and rather are able to develop a quick MVP, if you want, and see if the solution has attraction in the market.
I'm going to jump in also, Camilo, if I may, on the blockchain. I think when I first hear about the blockchain as an owner of a business, when I first hear it from a technology point of view, it was very confusing, because different people who built the technology were saying that their technology is better, their blockchain is better, this blockchain is better than that blockchain, my blockchain is good, my consensus is better, that algorithm is better, I'm going to be able to do this. And it was very confusing when I first got into this space. And this is where we need to basically understand technology in itself is not about who has the most fancy bells and whistles, right? It really must be the one that can be practically be applied to what we need to use. So when we look at blockchain and the key few things that Stefan talked about, right? It's something that we can put onto the cloud, that we can actually basically share that information, and it's immutable, and it's open to people to see it in such a way that they can trust it, right? Because in the current world, what is happening is that we do have data, but the data sits in my own ERP system or my own Excel spreadsheet. And then the buyer would have his own Excel spreadsheet and his own ERP system. So in the past, the reason is that if you have two databases that you can change and you can just do whatever you want, then what we have actually used the blockchain, and the way we looked at it was, we need a place to keep it on the cloud, a database that can keep the data, and one that no one can change. And once you put it on, basically you can't really change the history or the things that you have done. And the way so we approached the blockchain was a bit different by saying that we did not try to make sure that everything works. But what we made sure is that if things don't work, we know where it didn't work and who did it. All right.
Excellent. So yeah, and an additional layer of security and transparency for the producers and for all the actors in the food chain. Very, very interesting. So there's another question. So far, we've been talking about the producers and we are analyzing everything from the supply point of view. But now we have a question with regard to the customers. And the question is, from a customer point of view, why is it important to have this level of traceability and visibility when it comes to agricultural products?
Well, I think that sounds like a question I'm dealing with, right? Because we sell a lot of products to Southeast Asia, right? And of course to China, Japan, Korea, Middle East, even Australia, right? So these are where our customers are based. The visibility and traceability has two layers. One is the layers of the B2B level, which means business to business. It means if you are on a supplier side, now the people who buy likely to be either the supermarkets or wholesalers, right? So this is the bigger global trade that happens. And then of course, from the wholesalers and the retailers like supermarkets, they will sell it to the end consumer. Now, two things that are happening. One is that the consumers are now, like what Professor Camilo said in the beginning, is that people are now starting to ask, are these things, where is it from? Is it safe, right? And this is starting to become a very big question because of what's going on in the world, right? Especially in the COVID environment. Now, the COVID environment has made things a lot more difficult and safety is now really the key to all of us. So one of the things is this, that we got to make sure that the consumers actually get to know what's going on. But from a business perspective, this is also allowing us to really get to the consumer who now is saying, hey, the buyers are saying, look, I need to tell my consumer the information. If you don't provide me with this visibility, and you and I are wasting time by arguing about the products that you send are either not correct or there's a problem, we don't have that luxury to sort of like ding dong right here and there like in the past. Because of COVID environment, whatever we bring in and whatever we bring out to the market needs to go out efficiently. And if you do not have that traceability and the visibility, then you'll be wasting time arguing rather than actually making it more efficient. So this is why the buyers are asking for it right now. Both sides. That means the business to business are asking for it, as well as the consumer are asking it. It is getting more and more important.
Excellent. Is there anything else you want to add, Stefan?
Yeah, maybe just under the current pandemic situation, we can even say that the tendency of the consumer, this shift of paradigm to actually know about the origin of the products and its roots and the traceability has even accelerated in a great matter nowadays, as there are so much anxiety in the space, so much precaution to be taken on so the coronavirus, basically to control from an origin where something comes from that I eventually will be eating and will go right into my body and my and be vital for myself has increased on the consumer side the demand for these solutions incredibly, I would say. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, we have observed that trend of people becoming increasingly aware of what they consume and also more connected and more aware about the importance of sustainability. So it is important also for that matter.
Camilo, sorry, I just want to add one more line, right?
Absolutely.
Just so to talk about what you just said, right? That means the traceability and what we consume is not, we are not just tackling the fresh fruits or vegetables. We actually are now starting to move into seafood, into dairy, into meat, poultry. I think those are the areas that also require the same kind of traceability and visibility. So that's where DiMuto has also moved forward. We have actually gone into areas, especially areas where you need the cold chain, right? So I just wanted to add that this is also a big active area for us.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Gary. So now we have some questions about Colombia. I guess we are finally connecting to the context of our country. And I would like to start with one very general question, which is, what is so far your experience working with Colombian exporters in this sector?
Stefan?
Yeah, maybe I'll start off here. So I think what we've seen is, interestingly, there is two types of exporters, I would say. On the one hand, those that really have understood the value, the long-term value of building a brand and differentiating the products through the use of technologies such as the one that DiMuto is presenting, but really are involved in products of high quality, and we're talking about specialized coffee, avocados, we're talking about exotic fruits. Every time where a perceived value from the consumer is beyond a price and the commodity. And then we have on the other side traditional exporters who have run their business for many years successfully and absolutely respected on, let's say, a differentiation more by price and not on the branding side. So sometimes this is what we're seeing also a generational thing potentially between the different or within the different companies in a certain subsector. And I believe it's a great chance. We're seeing a lot of young people involved in managerial levels on the export side, open to new technologies, embracing, understanding how international markets are looking for this kind of solution, also trying to position their company for the next 10, 20, 30 years. Yeah. So I believe we will see interesting trends coming out of the adoption of technology. I think as in any case, you have early adopters, you have then a mass, and have laggards basically, and then one gets ahead of another. So I believe we have a healthy and heterogeneous mix in Colombia so far.
Well, for me, I've been very fortunate to be working with the Colombians, right? And I think it started off with me being introduced to Pro Colombia. It's based in Singapore. I've met your Colombian ambassador, and from there, I actually started to meet a lot. I think Stefan and Sarah, and everyone in Colombia. I can't wait to go to Medellin. Actually, I was supposed to be there in, I think, May. That was when I was supposed to go, but because of COVID, I had canceled my trip. I would like to go there again. But one of the things dealing with the Colombians, I must say, all right, is that the people that we have met and the people that we've been talking to, like what Stefan says, I think the younger people are definitely very, very open, right? And I think they're very excited about the future. I can see the enthusiasm. I can see the way they want to basically make Colombia, much better than what it was. I know your history. I think the excitement and the potential of Colombia and the Colombian people, I can see you're on the right track, right? I think the potential is really there. I think where the difficulties, where some young people may actually feel frustrated is maybe you may not be able to get the generation ahead of you to change as quickly. But maybe sometimes don't quicken the change. Sometimes the best way to show is to really give them the ability to see it for themselves, right? See how it really works, and then communicate even more. And I think activities like this is a great chance, right, to actually share a lot of the information. So working with Colombians and everything so far has been really nice. Thank you.
Well, of course, we are delighted to hear that, Gary. We have more questions. Actually, we're very happy to receive many questions from the people that have joined us. There is one comment from one of the people connected right now, and this person is telling us that product labeling is not something that many producers in Colombia are paying enough attention to, because for the local market is not something that relevant. So how to persuade them that when it comes to international markets, we really need to pay more attention to that?
That is a very, very good question. It's true, right? Because most people don't want to pay more. And this is one of the things that when I first started DiMuto, the first truth of it is everybody wanted traceability, but nobody wants to pay for it, right? So that's the truth. So how we looked at it, first of all, that the technology, first of all, has to be one where it has to be applied to be not expensive, right? You cannot go to the IBMs of the world and pay a consultant to do blockchain. And then to the answer of the question is that, yes, today the consumer, like the local consumer in Colombia, may not want to pay more, and then therefore the producers don't want to use this. But let me put it the other way around. Actually, in a lot of the things that we're doing, especially for export market, we are already having labels on the fruit, but you are using a different kind of label that doesn't tell you anything. And actually every box today, when you sell something, you also put a label, but it doesn't tell you anything, right? So the way when we have actually used the system, it's not that we have changed the wheel. We actually use the same wheel, but now the wheel tells us more things that doesn't tell us before, right? So using the same label, but use QR instead, right? What's the difference between a barcode and a QR code? Is really about just the QR code can read documents and link to documents, right? A barcode just gives you numeric numbers. So what we're doing is just tweaking what's already there and making use of it. And then the efficiency and the time wasted in arguing, we don't waste time arguing anymore. So the savings for the producers is actually going to be massive, right? Not just what the consumer can gain. So even if you sell the same price, the information is actually a lot better. And I'll give you an example that in Australia, 2 products was in the wholesale market. And I'm not saying that everything's going to happen like this, but one of their products with our traceability system was sold for 40% more because producers produce it with our technology and the consumer pay more because they feel that this is the effort that they are going to be paid. So sometimes I think it's not billed so that people will pay you more, but when people know that there's such a thing, people would pay more because of the safety that you bring.
Excellent. Is there anything you want to add, Stefan?
Yeah, well, I think Gary explained it quite well. So first of all, the technology is set up in such sense that it pays for itself, basically. Yeah, and that the fruits coming out of it basically overcompensate the nominal cost of its implementation on the internal side and on the perceived value side and customer loyalty. Now, if the answer, for instance, from some of the producers might be, look, my customer does not really value this, etc., then ask yourself, what kind of business are you in the long term? Yeah, if are you actually just being metered and measured on the price? Well, is this a healthy business in the very long run, or how replaceable are you? It's basically a way also of creating entry barriers around your business itself. No, make sure this is part of your strategy, and don't be let's say a ball in the playing field of people choosing you for your mere price. No.
Excellent, thank you. Another question from the audience, and this one is, what is DiMuto and Latin Leap strategy to connect with those producers that where they use is in the toughest part of the country, in the most rural areas, in the areas with more restricted area to internet and other technologies? How are you guys connecting with these producers?
Stefan, I do it. Okay. No, I think this is a good question because it's not easy. All right. The reason why you call it the toughest areas is because it is a tough area. So let's not make our journey too tough, right? I think what we need to do is to be able to show the baby steps, right? Show some of the things, and then show some of the success, and then from there, basically share that news, and then try to use the word of mouth. I think the farming community has a way of communicating with one another, and I think this is the best way to show it, right? The test of the pudding is really in the eating. So you really need to make sure that you really have the ability to do this. And I think this is where we really think that the way to reach out. And then in places where they're rural, like you said, there are no connections, right? And if there's no connection, then how do we still be able to capture the data and allow them to upload it so that when they are in a place where they can upload it? So this is not like a banking transaction where you require things immediately, right? You need things, and so you can actually allow the information to be uploaded, even though it may be a few days later, but that information is actually uploaded. So these are the baby steps that we've actually done to go and penetrate it. And I think in after the COVID environment, hopefully there'll be more people sharing this information, and then this could be a bit more open. But at the same time, because of the COVID environment, because people cannot travel, then what we are able to see is that people are asking by messaging, how are you doing it, right? And then people are getting more curious to learn about this kind of stuff. And I think this is really a great opportunity as well.
Thank you, Gary. There is a question that is very relevant right now because of the COVID situation. So what this person is telling us is, in the middle of the COVID situation, that governments are now promoting local consumption. Do you have plans to provide this technology for non-exporting companies, for the domestic markets as well?
Yeah, no, I think this is a very, 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 very good question, because in the past, it's just not about export, because it's domestic. I mean, big countries like yourself, right? One country, one place producing it to go into Medellin, one going to Bogota, and one for the different parts, and then what was packed from the sea going into your big cities, right? I mean, this is the kind of technology that we're looking at, right? Because you got to go through by different transportations, and this on a domestic level. And for countries like yourself, we are big, right? This is definitely a very relevant technology as well, because even the local producers can actually be able to understand their local consumption better if they have the data. So it's not really just for export, but it really is also for any producer, in fact, right? Any small farmer, because once you can see what was sold, then you know what was consumed. Then when you start planning, in the past, the way the agriculture has worked is today they plant, tomorrow they sell, they start again. And there's no data. They don't remember what happened last season. They start the next season. And then whatever price was happened, where they sell it, they just wash their hands and then move it. Nothing was built. But hopefully, for the domestic producers, this is a way to really get them into the database where they can see, they can plan, they can actually be more efficient. And this is where the government can assist them so that they know what to plan, what to plant, what to sell, what to grow, right? And I think how they can sell it better, more efficient, so that we don't waste what actually they have been doing for the time that they put in and the effort for it, and get the best value that they need. So all these things, if you put it in the context of a local situation, especially in this kind of environment, it is actually very relevant. Don't talk about the export first. Let's help those who are already doing it for the domestic market.
Okay, thank you very much, Gary. We have time for a couple more questions. There is one question, which is, since you guys are based in Singapore, have you guys identified maybe some opportunities for Colombian agricultural products or food products in Singapore?
Yeah, avocados is one. We're really getting them in. We're getting Colombia's avocados into China, right? And we're starting even more. We are looking at coffee, specialty coffee. We've actually started working on flowers, right? Especially for those who are going into Europe and the US. So yeah, there are lots more opportunity. And we started with exotic fruits like the passion fruits that, you know, I don't know how to say that in Spanish, but it's
Maracuyá.
Yeah, right. And then your dragon fruit, you know, the yellow dragon, the highest. Those are beautiful.
I mean, that's right.
Yeah, excellent. The gooseberries, those are also excellent. You know, these are starting to come in. And to be honest, the country that has actually done it better and sooner was Ecuador, right? And I can see Colombia coming up very, very quickly, right? So I think this is really exciting news for us, and we're using this to introduce it to Singaporeans. You know, that they are actually enjoying it. I always tell people the best passion fruit in the world is the yellow dragon fruit, right? It's super sweet.
Excellent. Is there anything you want to add, Stefan, from what you guys are doing in Latin Leap?
Yeah, maybe in the range of products, I didn't know it became that clear, but we're having an interesting blueberry project also coming up with DiMuto for the Singaporean market out of Colombia. So there's a lot of businesses. We're looking at raw sugar cane together. I know if we can say this in this context here. So there are a lot of specialized products with this high value and differentiating qualities to it that in the Asian market and very advanced markets such as Singaporean market can have a great traction. Yeah? So a lot is coming up.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Gary, you mentioned that DiMuto is also now not only fruits, but also is entering into meat exports. So there is a question with regard to the meat market. So DiMuto has a relation with the meat market. What is the perspective for the global trading of carcass meat? The regulations for this product are stronger than the ones for fruits and vegetables. I don't know if you guys have the answer, but if you do, please go ahead.
Yeah. Actually, it's a very, very good question. It's true, right? The meat market is completely different from the fruits and vegetables, and the regulations, like what the question was asked, is correct. Because the regulations there are mainly banned for the bigger boys, right? So you don't just get and no one can just open up an abattoir to do this business. That's actually regulated abattoirs to do this business. And governments are very, very, very strict about this. So this is really where we've been working with a lot of the producers. And one of the countries that we work very closely with is Australians on this. We are using the Australian industry to actually guide us along the way and put the standards into it so that we can then apply some of the best practices into countries that are trying to do this, like for example, Brazil, and then even in Colombia, in Mexico, right? We know that the standards are different, and that's why the best practices and the standards and working with the regulations has to be there. So we need to basically put, like what we said earlier, whether is it for a fruit or whether is it for a meat, a lot of it is not information that was actually easily available or shared. And sometimes we don't really know what was the steps that was required, and nobody really puts it to that. And I think this is where DiMuto is really trying to basically, not only are we able to trace certain things and actually put it down there, we also want to make sure that this kind of sharing of knowledge, right, to help and put some best practices, even what we learn in Australia, what we learn in the US, we can actually put it into some of the developing countries and actually sharing with them those knowledge that we have as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So I'm gonna make the most of the advantage of being the moderator to ask the last question, but it's one of a lot of relevance for my students. So how do you guys feel that technology is making the global food chain more sustainable?
It's a very important question of sustainability, and I think everybody talks about sustainability. My personal view of sustainability is that you can't sustain something if you do not know what you're sustaining, right? So data becomes the key, right? So for the young people and the students out there, it's great to have a lot of vision and wanting to save the world, but I think we all must come back down. What is the data that we need so that we can really do a better job at it? Because we don't want to put more resources to do something that we don't really know and sort of like groping in the dark. So the way I think that we need to approach is, maybe let's start the journey in one where you say, let's put some light bulbs in a very dark room. It's not perfect vision, but you start seeing what's going on first, and then start talking about sustainability on top of it. Don't put the cart before the horse. I think a lot of work really needs to be about what we are trying to sustain. Have a better framework, identify the parameters, get as much data. And when I say get as much data, I think it's very important also to address the problem. It's not just what we know. We need to know what we don't know, right? And I think this is kind of like where I hope the young students like yours, right? Don't be afraid to know what you don't know. In fact, it's very important to actually identify what you don't know. It's not just about what you know. So I think this is really how you can approach sustainability, not just by writing papers about it, but really tackling the problems of identifying the parameters of what are you trying to sustain.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else you want to add, Stefan?
Yes, look, try to harmonize sustainability with economic growth in order to find a stable solution. So as Gary was saying, dreaming about sustainability and drawing castles up in the air might in the end lead to frustration. So try to look at things on how do I create a positive, a win-win scenario, economic project, and how can this actually contribute to sustainability. I think that then you're on the good track and usually find backers and supporters and investors and whatever for your idea. No?
Okay, well, I guess that's everything we had in terms of the questions. Once again, thank you very much, Gary and Stefan, for connecting with us in this conversation about technology and in this conversation about the global food chain. It is very inspiring to see how well data and what you guys are doing with DiMuto can help companies be not only more sustainable, as we were just talking about, but also to be able to access international markets. So that is very important for a country like Colombia that is, because of the post-conflict, finally being able to access markets and to produce other agricultural products. So this is very relevant for us, and it is very interesting to see how we can connect with partners in Singapore. As I was telling you, it is a commitment that we have now as an Universidad EAFIT with this bet on agriculture that we have from the engineering school, the science school, but also the business school and the Asia Pacific Study Center. So we are delighted to have this conversation with DiMuto and with Latin Leap. And we thank you for accepting our invitation, as well as we thank you, all the people that connected with us today. We managed to have over 60 people connected throughout the conference. So we are very happy to share this with you. And once again, thank you and have a very good evening.
Thank you very much, Ray.
Thank you for any attention and the questions. Thank you.
The presentation is going to be recorded, is shared on YouTube in case you want to watch it afterwards. And you are going to be able to access the QR with Gary's contact information in case you want to get in touch with DiMuto. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a very good night.
Thank you very much again.
And very good day, Gary. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.